Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to House of Footy. It's your boy Ray, and with me, I've got a full house. Welcome, Mac
Good evening.
and Gio.
What is good, everyone?
What a weekend of action from the Premier League, boys. We're here to cover some of the big scorelines, and we'll also preview some of the upcoming Champions League matches coming this week. Before we get into it, don't forget to follow us on our social medias, both on X and Instagram. Our handle is at @houseof_footy. Also, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to us. We are on both Spotify and YouTube. And lastly, feel free to get in touch with us via email. We love hearing from you guys, and we want you guys getting involved. Our email is houseoffooty@hotmail.com. Now that that's done, let's get straight into the action. The first game that we're going to cover is Chelsea 2, Arsenal 2. A lot happened, a lot of talking points, a lot of ups and downs, and positives and negatives from both teams, Mac. But in the end, I think it was a fair 2-2 result, or fair result in the end. 2-2 may have been a little bit more than some expected, but what are your thoughts and takeaways from this game?
So I think at the end of the day, I disagree with you in terms of it being a fair result. And just go through a couple points. I know that we want to go around the horn and kind of share some thoughts as we go through the kind of the initial reaction. I think that you got to take a look at this as a huge point for Arsenal coming back from a 2-0 down, and then coming and away from home to still be able to make that comeback, still manage to be able to salvage a point from this draw, which I think that they were confident maybe going in to potentially take all 3 points. So I think that's a positive, and you got to take positives for Chelsea. I think that defensively, you can see that Pochettino has something there. He has something cooking, where he has a template of a game plan where, depending on the team that he's looking to be able to put out, and the team that he's looking to be able to face, they can prevent other teams from scoring. I think that for the first 60 odd minutes, it played out perfectly. It looked like a lot of people thought going into the matchup, they're going to play a 4-3-3 when they shifted really to a 4-4-2, kind of with 2 number false nines in some ways with Palmer and Gallagher there, and they were just have to clog up the middle and deny a possession-based team, as Arsenal are trying to be, for breaking out and getting into the final third. So I think defensively, great positives from Chelsea. I think there's a lot to be able to be positive and happy about. However, from Arsenal side, I still think that this is 8.1 and 2 points dropped from Chelsea, considering what ended up happening throughout the course of the game. So that's my initial reaction from the result.
Okay, well, that's of course, that covers a lot of what happened, and he touched on it a little bit there, Gio, in terms of some initial, I guess, surprises for the lineups. I definitely didn't expect Cole Palmer to start as a quote-unquote number 9. When I first saw that front three, I thought it would be Mudryk down the middle, Cole Palmer down the left, and then Sterling down the right. But as Matt quickly mentioned, and correctly mentioned, of course, the Gallagher and Palmer roles were a little bit deeper, and Sterling and Mudryk played out wide, sort of giving that outlet for Chelsea whenever they were able to break. But apart from, I guess, that little change there, anything stand out from you from Chelsea in this game, Gio?
Yeah, no, I thought Cole Palmer had a great game. Making runs, he was making very good off-ball runs, and I just got to shout out my boy. You guys know how I feel about him, Conor Gallagher. I thought he had quite a good game himself, being able to drive the ball down the middle as much as he possibly could, and trying to feed players like Raheem Sterling, Cole Palmer. To add on to Chelsea's day, I think obviously the Mudryk goal was quite fortunate, to say the least. Based on the replays, his eyes were to try and find the player back post, but it just happened to sail in. Questionable positioning from David Raya, but hey, sometimes when things are going your way, they go your way. But to be fair, Arsenal got one back from another goalkeeper error. Very poor miscommunication there, whether that was Enzo's ball, Conor Gallagher's ball, whoever's ball that was. There just wasn't enough communication. I think Conor Gallagher was expecting it to go long, and obviously, based on the replay, he was already inching forward to go long, but Sanchez already had played it short. Great finish by Deck, but again, I just think overall, Chelsea easily could have taken it had it gone an extra, say, 10 minutes. I think they obviously took a little while to find their footing, but that being said, once they got one, they were so hungry to get a couple more, and they were very close to getting that third. So, had the game gone any longer, or had the goal from Declan Rice come any sooner, or Trossard come any sooner, I think Arsenal very well could have gone and won that match.
Okay, well, Mac, Gio mentioned some of the mistakes here. Of course, you can say both goalkeeping mistakes that led to those two goals. I guess let's go back to the first goal of the game, though, the Cole Palmer PK, which he converted. I was quite surprised that he was the one taking it. That was my sort of gripe about it. But, of course, it was given as a penalty kick after VAR review. Any thoughts on your end for that decision, Mac?
For one, in regards to taking the penalty kick, I if you saw the kind of going back into it where Raheem Sterling actually wanted to take it, and then Enzo Fernandez took the ball from him and gave it to Cole Palmer. So it does seem like he is the designated penalty shot taker, which is surprising considering his only goals in his Premier League career. The goal, prior to this game was a penalty kick. So maybe that's something in training that they've thought of, but Sterling definitely wanted to be able to take it at that moment. In regards to that individual call, looking back, initial thought, I think that, and it compares and contrasts a lot to what happened in the Liverpool game later on that we may talk about. I think that's slightly harsh considering the distance that William Saliba was away from Mudryk when the header made contact with his arm. His arm was outside of silhouette. I think that's kind of the rule that they're going by now. If it is anywhere outside, no matter how close they are, I think it's rough. But I don't know what he's supposed to do in terms of when you're jumping up for a header. He didn't have his arms above his head. I think it's a little bit, and considering the distance, I think it's unfair. But I can understand 50-50. Okay, fine. This one will go Chelsea's way. But when Cole Palmer did step up, he took it well. I think though, overall, if we're continuing on into the game and even into Chelsea's second goal, it seems like this team, if you even look at expected goals, they have a higher expected goals this year than Arsenal, actually. So they should be doing quite swimmingly within the league. They just haven't been clinical. And I think that's a consistent trend going into this game because their two goals, what were they from? A goalkeeping error and a shaky penalty call. Let's be realistic. So I think that defensively, yes, we have a lot of answers, but offensively, this team has still a lot of questions, and I think that they're quite poor in the final third. So even though I think they would be disappointed coming away with just a draw, I think in some ways you could look at it from their perspective, they're very, very fortunate because a lot of their opportunities come from scuffed mistakes. So again, if we were to kind of signal back to that one call, I think that's a little bit rough. Considering, I guess, also in the second half, and maybe you'll jump onto this later, Ray, where Arsenal didn't get the penalty call for Sanchez power driving Jesus, similar to the Onana situation. I think this is the first Premier League weekend match week. So I think that it's unfortunate there where the refereeing decision seems to have too much of a dramatic impact, where it seems clear and cut. I think by general consensus, especially if you're going to call a soft one on the other side, to not see such a heavy tackle being paid back on the other side, it's kind of rough. So again, great to see, I guess, again, for individual from Cole Palmer, but again, these referee decisions are still, even with VAR, are still, to me, a little bit too far incorrect.
So you're part of the conspiracy, so just hop on the bandwagon with 100%. Me here at Liverpool. But no, I completely get what you're saying. Apart from those goals that Chelsea did score, credit to them, not a whole lot created in the final third. And so that's why I thought, you know what, they did well to control certain periods of the game, a lot more impressive than in previous weeks. But for Arsenal as well, on the other hand, their first goal comes from a mistake, and then the second goal, great ball by Saka and Trossard found in the back post. Individual piece of brilliance and magic in that point in the game. But apart from that, Gio, it looked like Arsenal weren't up to speed. Maybe they were listening to our podcast from last week, predicting that it was going to be an easy Arsenal win. But is this concern for you for Arsenal, Gio, that they're starting a little bit slower in some games, eventually finding their way back to come back and win games and even tie games at the end? But is there some sort of, I guess, something going on within them that, they're now stepping onto the pitch thinking, we're going to control the game and we're going to win, but things don't go that way, especially early on?
Right. I think there's, there could potentially be a little bit of underestimating opponents. Chelsea has been Chelsea. Their track record hasn't been great for them. But, that's the thing. Early on when say, for example, Pep was, starting his domination, he didn't let up any game. He wanted to dominate every game, and he did dominate every game. It's only now that through slips and cracks that we see Pep have an off game where they start really slow, or have a string of games that they start really slow, much like their Champions League match that they lost to Chelsea. I thought that was one of the key examples of Pep. So if Arteta's learning anything from Pep, I think he needs to instill in this team that if we want to be, or if we want to win the Prem this year, we have to come out and win every game and control every game from start to finish. Or at least 85% of the game, they have to be able to dominate, through every aspect of the game. So I think there was a little bit of underestimation. Credits to Chelsea for doing as much as they could while they were being underestimated, and while Arsenal was kind of finding their footing. But yeah, I think Arsenal, grand scheme of things, Arsenal fans don't have anything to worry about, because this will be kind of a wake up call. Should they have really drawn this game? No, they'll feel kind of unjust. Again, like Max said, penalty call was sort of on the fence. And then their chances were really fluky. So minus the penalty call, minus that very fluke Mudryk goal, it's still a 2-0 win. So they'll be kind of saddened that they didn't get the win, but almost another driving factor that they need to come out and shouldn't even be in those types of situations.
Yeah, I want to be able to jump on that, because I think, Gio, you highlighted in terms of kind of the setup, and I think that you can, first, to give credit to Chelsea, what they did by playing the two number 10s and kind of as striker roles, they clogged up the midfield, where, generally speaking, Arsenal are trying to outnumber you in the midfield with a kind of Zinchenko jumping in and having Declan Rice, Jorginho, and Odegaard in the midfield between the four of them. By dropping the two strikers back, kind of clogging up with Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez, both who played extremely well, it kind of get even number situations, which was difficult for Arsenal to progress the ball. So, which credit to Chelsea, but then Arteta, for me, took too long to make the change of taking Jorginho off and putting Kai Havertz on. Because if the middle's clogged up and the referees are not calling fouls on the wingers, and Cucurella was harassing Saka, and I'm surprised he didn't get a couple yellow cards throughout the course of the game, to be honest, with the amount of tackles he was doing. But I think that the next option is, okay, if you can't go through them, you can't go around them, you have to go over them. And by creating an outlet like a Kai Havertz coming onto the middle of the pitch and kind of skipping past the midfield, which would happen later on in the game, created more opportunities for Arsenal. So I felt like Arteta was a little bit delayed to that. So I think that's an interesting point, where Arteta, from what like Gio's saying, is that if something's happening, you have to make the adjustments to the game. There can't just kind of be that single game plan. And if you notice something is going wrong, make the adjustments. And when that adjustment did happen, then that's when you see, if the game lasted 5-10 minutes, Arsenal win that game. Because that change did happen, and because they do have the better quality on the pitch. But at the end of the day, I do want to just highlight something that we kind of skipped over. The Declan Rice finish from the Sanchez mistake is world class. That was amazing. Just inside the half, curving it around on the first touch. The mentality, just to be aware of that. So even though a lot of it, Sanchez, Fernandez, Gallagher, whoever made the mistake there, fine. But that Rice from just inside half, phenomenal. Chef's kiss.
Yeah, great finish. And of course, a lot of things that can be learned about, and I think Arteta will take a good sort of wake-up call from this game. And of course, what a better way to go into essentially a easy win next game, where they face Sevilla in the Champions League. Sevilla, of course, looking to drop down to the Europa League, as we all expect, and win it later in the season. But yeah, that's pretty much what we cover from this game. We're going to move on to another game where, like, I guess, the Arsenal-Chelsea game, if this game maybe was an extra 10-20 minutes longer, it could have been a different result, Gio. But it did start very, very strong for City. 2 goals inside the first 20 minutes. They looked like they were back to their old selves. Doku terrorizing Pascal Gross and James Milner down the right-hand side over there, finding firstly Alvarez in the 8 minutes, and then of course Haaland taking 3 touches before finishing his goal inside 20 minutes, and so they were pretty much cruising inside the first half before Brighton tried to make a comeback in the second half. What were your takes from this game, Gio?
I thought obviously City had something to prove. They came out and they picked at Brighton's flaws early. They knew where they could exploit. That was Doku on Pascal Gross, which was great. That we want to see Jeremy Doku in those situations. That's why he was brought in to be a more dynamic player on the wing, where he can take players on one and create chances for guys in the middle, like a Julian Alvarez, a like an Erling Haaland. But to your point on Erling Haaland's being able to get 3 touches, was that poor defending, or was that poor striker's touch? For the fact that he gets 3 touches, he needs to be more sharp. I find as a striker. Yes, we know he can play with brute force and brute speed, but I think as a striker at a world class level, he needs to be more precise and more concise with his touches. Not many chances, or if you want to face a bigger team in a bigger competition, you might not even get 2 touches for that matter. So for him to have to take 3 touches to find his footing to get that shot off, mind you, not a fantastic shot either, if I'm being very critical, then he needs to do better as a striker. Yes, the Prem is a little bit more physical, and he does benefit off that. I think once he gets or decides to make that jump into another league, he's going to have to kind of refine his skills again. And I guess until we cross that bridge, he did what he was supposed to, and finally got a monkey off his back, being able to score a goal again. So all in all, good day for City. That 1 goal, I won't look too much into it. I thought Brighton again had their chances. Matoma, of course, was Matoma, fantastic, as you said, Ray, in our group chat. Just the stop and go, the fluidity, the motion was a pleasure to watch. But all in all, tough day for Brighton. But City came out and took care of business, no matter the scoreline. They took care of business, and that's what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, and with Haaland, of course, there's always going to be critics about his involvement in, of course, build-ups to sort of the Man City attacks. At times, it feels like, yes, the goalkeeper is doing more in the build-up than Erling Haaland at times, of course, because of the possession that City are able to overwhelm their opponents with. It was a great welcome back for John Stones next to Rodri, I think, back in this game to give more solidity in that back line. And of course, moving forward, that's going to be, I think, a platform for them to continue to control games. But anything else really stand out to you in terms of this Man City Brighton result?
Personally, Roberto De Zerbi must hate James Milner. 37 years old, coming back from an injury, and you play him against Jeremy Doku. That's a masochist move. Like that's just not okay. I feel like that's bullying. In fact, I feel like James Milner can file a complaint with HR with Brighton, because that's just not how you treat somebody coming back from injury. That's not okay. I think though, to speak to Doku, he was phenomenal. I think will be the separator for him going through his Man City career. In the final third, is he able to kind of make the right decision? Because at some points you see he was terrorizing. He has the pace, he has the ability, he has the technical talent to be able to do what he wants, but either choosing the right moment to make that pass or having the clinical ability to finish. I think that will be the separator if he's just going to be kind of a good Premier League winger to potentially a great Premier League winger. But again, it's very early days for him. Interesting to see. I think though, the interesting part would be, I know I'm skipping ahead to kind of what may happen afterwards, is that the Akanji red card means that he's going to miss the Manchester derby. So I think that's huge. And as you highlighted, as the game went on, it felt like Brighton were potentially growing more and more into it. I understand they did have an extra man available, but that's when you saw more opportunities for Matoma. That's when you saw more opportunities for Ansu Fati. And I think that looking back, I think the decision making in terms of how and when they press, because of a lot of the tactical shifts early on in the game of what Man City were able to do, because Rodri dropping deeper, John Stones coming back into midfield at some points, that fluidity caused problems for Brighton they weren't able to figure out in time. As the game got later into it and gaining an extra man, they were able to figure those aspects out and were able to hit Man City quite a few times on the break. And to be honest, without some goalkeeping heroics, they could have come up with levels. So I think that we learned a lot from both teams. It's interesting to see, though, and I know, like, kind of taking a step back, looking at the top teams around the Premier League chasing for the title, no one's in kind of the run, playing at their peak performance at the moment. So it's great to see Man City, for them to be able to still scrape out a result against a Brighton team where even themselves, I don't think that they've been on a great run of form recently. They haven't kind of kept up positive results recently. But there's still a lot of positive signs. So overall, I thought this game, again, it ended up being a fair result, but still leaves me asking a lot of questions about if these two teams are going to reach their ambitions. Man City for winning the title, potentially in other competitions as well. Brighton challenging maybe for a top four spot. European football again, potentially. Still a lot of questions.
Yeah, and of course, just on that note, yeah, Brighton did well to, even at certain points in the second half, to dominate possession at City inside their defensive zone, and so that's a welcome sign for other Premier League clubs out there that it can happen. Ansu Fati, again, getting a goal, so that's another goal to his time at Brighton. But I guess one negative for Brighton is Solly March picking up an injury. He was playing as a left back for Estupinian, who is also injured, so that's going to be another area of concern. So two wide back positions for Brighton are going to need a lot of covering with, of course, 38-year-old James Milner deputizing in that position. But let's move on then quickly before we wrap up this part of the podcast to another Manchester team that got the win this weekend, Gio. That's, of course, Man U against Sheffield United 2-1 at the end. A much-needed win, I think, and at the end, Man U got the win. But what were your takeaways from this game?
Sloppier than ever. Is all I can say. I think the first 15 minutes I was just scratching my head and thinking, what the heck is going on? Couldn't really string passes together. A lot of just dumping. As soon as they got the ball, I thought the midfield was poor early on. They didn't resort back to their old ways, and shocking they didn't resort back to the old ways and trying to find Rashford alone and isolate that part of the field for him. I think that could have worked for them this time around, but for some reason did not go to it. Played the ball through to Anthony a lot. Hodgland pretty much had no service. A couple of chances here and there, yes, but apart from that, it's very tough for him to even get the ball. He's kind of almost making empty runs. I just thought, again, got away with one. After the McTominay handball, I think it could have gone either way. I'm happy with the 3 points, don't get me wrong. But again, the performance hasn't proved that they have really turned the corner by any means, and there's still a lot of improvement that needs to be done if they want any shot or any chance at anything less than a 5-0 defeat against City. So
on that note, of course, we have to highlight McTominay, who played the hero and inside 28 minutes, did well to control that laser of a pass that Bruno Fernandes hit at him, basically. I don't know how he got that much space to get a shot off, but well done there. But of course, 3 minutes later, he concedes the penalty kick from a handball, which Ollie McBurney puts away. And then, of course, late in the game, Dalot, great finish, just inside 30 yards, top corner, and that's pretty much game. Just quickly on Sheffield, that is I think a better performance for them. Of course, last time out they lost 8-0 to Newcastle at home, but were able to show that they had the potential going forward in this game. But now tossing it to you, Mac, about Man U and what this means for them, especially with a must-win Champions League game coming up midweek. What are your thoughts?
So for this performance, I think this is very interesting because if you asked me going into this game potentially, what could be the positives from this Manchester United lineup? I think it was, if you look at their attackers, the names on the team list, Højlund, Fernandes, Antony, Rashford, you can expect them to be able to create and score a lot of opportunities against a Sheffield United team that, let's be honest, haven't been great thus far this year. I think that I leave more questions leaving this game, asking questions about them because I disagree with you a little bit. They did have opportunities. They just made the wrong decisions in the final third continuously. All four of them, I felt like. And they could have all played a lot better in this game and taken opportunities that were created. I think that if they're going to be a better team, they should win this game 4-1 or 4-0 in some cases. Defensively, though, I want to be able to give them a lot of credit. I know that there are a lot of kind of let's be generous, a lot of their characters thus far over the last couple of years, Onana and Harry Maguire, played a great game. Onana made some nice saves. Harry Maguire played very, very well. So I think Diego Dallo played well on the right-hand side. Amrabat, even though, again, not playing in his ideal position, played well. I think that defensively, they look to be a little bit more of a unit, at least coming out of this game. Again, I understand Sheffield United, probably not the most explosive attack they'll face throughout the Premier League season. But I think defensively look solid enough. But offensively, there's still a lot of questions where their best players, the people that are making the most amount of money, are nowhere playing near up to snuff. Between, I think it's, if I have this correct, Fernandez, Antony, Højlund, and Rashford, they only have one Premier League goal between the four of them. So going into these weeks against the bigger teams, they have to step up because they can't just rely on kind of defensively only allowing one goal or not that a clean sheet at times. They need to be able to put the ball into the back of net. So it's still early days, but we're getting close to the point where it's no longer going to be early days. So they need to start kind of stepping up.
That's exactly right. And I guess just to wrap up this part, Gio, Copenhagen midweek must win for United. What are your thoughts?
I mean, does it even matter anymore? Honestly, at this point, they ain't got the goods to go too deep in this tournament. You know, I hear all you delusional fans saying, you know, what if we're going to Cinderella? Fuck the Cinderella run. Sorry, we're gonna have to title this one explicit. But get out of the competition, man. Get out of the competition. Just focus on the Prem. Please do yourself this favor. Do the fans, you know, a favor. You know, continue on into the competition into Europa League is almost a disservice to the club at this point. Focus on one thing at a time. Get good at one thing first before we start moving on to other things. And that's it, man. I'm just tired. I'm just tired of seeing poor football being played. Ten Hag constantly says he wants to be the best, you know, counter-attacking team. You guys can't even get the ball, let alone play counter-attacking football. So, yeah, plenty to work on. Not looking forward to this game against Copenhagen. Don't really care. It'll be a Hodgson thing. I know they'll make a big deal about that. Post a bunch about that. Couldn't care less. Will I be watching? Probably, but that's not the point. The point is, I want them out the competition.
Okay, well, you heard it from us here. We're going to take a quick break here, and then we'll be back with some more Premier League games and Champions League games to talk about. So stay with us. Welcome back to House of Footy, guys. We are going to continue our podcast now discussing Aston Villa 4, West Ham 1. A big result for Aston Villa here, Mac, at home against West Ham. Got the monkey off their back against West Ham, and of course continuing their 11 unbeaten home streak in the Premier League under Unai Emery. This is, I think it was overall a comprehensive win. At times, you know, it was a really back and forth game, but the attacking prowess from Aston Villa came through and were able to deliver another 4-goal win. What were your takes from this game?
I thought Aston Villa played exceptionally well. I do agree that there were some, especially at 2-1, the game looked a little bit up for grabs, where in a 2-1 game, the fourth goal kind of always does, even with a 2-0 game, a third goal kind of just potentially could decide the momentum of the situation. So West Ham getting on the board and potentially chasing down to be able to get a tie, it's looked a little leggy. But once Ollie Watkins bagged that goal with his left foot near post, great finish, it kind of was signs he'll deliver the rest of the result. Aston Villa, I think, again, Gio always brings this up. They were our dark horse team. Love to see them playing well. I think that they're, thus far this season, they've done exceptionally well. In their next matchup, they're facing Luton. So again, let's put another 3 points on the board for them. So I think that would be very, very happy. But individually in this game, I really like in terms of they're very settled in their shape in terms of understanding each other's roles, where at certain points, I feel like previously, like a player like Douglas Luiz, he was exclusively kind of pigeonholed as, say, just a defensive midfielder that was going to play in between the center halves, where depending on the rotation on the pitch, you may now see him jump up the attack and joining in the goals, of course, getting on the score sheet today. And to be honest, should have scored a goal even earlier if Areola didn't make a phenomenal save. In addition, where you see players like John McGinn or others of ilk, or Tielemans when he does come on, having their opportunity kind of in the sunlight in some ways to be able to kind of enter the box, because there's an understanding in the midfield of, you know, certain coverage positions. These are the areas that we can kind of take care of. And because they play such a high line, they condense the pitch where if they do make that run, it isn't as difficult of a recovery run to get back into position. But But I think the separator for them to continue on is Ollie Watkins, where since under Unai Emery, he's taken a step forward, not even a leap forward in terms of his capabilities finishing. He should have got a goal early on in the game himself, end up scoring later on. But you see that before you kind of notice before he would kind of get scuff half chances. And if he didn't get the one early, his momentum or his confidence would kind of shake versus, yeah, he missed that opportunity early on, but he still has the confidence to be able to take players one-on-one and take opportunities as they come. So I think that this team, I think at a base defensively in midfield, they're going to be solid. But because Ollie Watkins, like I said, taking that leap, they're now entering the stratosphere of they can maybe be a top 4 team at the end of the year. They may be last year's Newcastle in some cases. So love to see and great for them to come up that result. I think West Ham, though, I think against these bigger teams, especially, they are getting a little bit found out in terms of defensively. They have a little bit of suspect holes of where you can get at them. And because they never retain the ball at all, let's be realistic. That's not their game plan. That's not their go-to. But against these bigger teams, they know if we just keep them out of the game and we cycle possession, we're going to get all the opportunities. They may not get any. So I'm a little bit worried about them. Again, still better than they're playing than last year. But I think that they need to evolve if they want to continue to grow.
Okay, I just want to go back to Aston Villa a little bit first. Mac mentioned, of course, now Emery has them looking like a good squad. Each of them know their roles, and of course you can tell that there are certain starters compared to bench players, essentially, and one of those bench players is, of course, Yuri Tillemans, who we had very, very high hopes for at this Aston Villa team. But I think it just goes to show how well Emery knows his team and has them playing, because Tillemans is not even starting in a midfield with Douglas Luiz and Kamara and McGinn, where even on the bench, they do have Leon Bailey, Diego Carlos to come, and then Donker as well. And even injured, they have Jacob Ramsey and Buendia. So that's a long list of players that, credit to Aston Villa, they have a good squad overall, and it's going to help them in various competitions. But not a great look for, I guess, Tillemans. And even though Leon Bailey got his goal, I think he would expect himself to start in certain games as well. Whereas Moussa Diaby and Ollie Watkins look like they have essentially nailed down those starting positions. But what were your thoughts on this Aston Villa team?
They're like Max said, they're starting to fly, and they're starting to get in a rhythm where their attackers are just, they're playing so well together. It's almost like they've been playing together for years. Again, like I mentioned in the preview, Moussa Diaby being able to just pull defenders out without even having the ball, because they have to be aware of his movement, is so beneficial to Ollie Watkins. And Ollie Watkins is, just getting a lot more space in general to operate. And then again, like to your point, like having that talent, being able to have those options come off the bench, and for those guys to be hungry to produce, to try to earn a starting spot is very key. And Unai is laughing right now because of the plethora of options he does have up front and in the midfield. And on top of that, you have this guy who is, I don't know how he's continued to stay on this team. I don't know whether he has photos or what what they say. Jamie McGinn is playing quite well, and he has been throughout the season. He's had very bright spots, in certain games. And for a player like him, who oftentimes gets overlooked because of the names that you see on the team sheets of other teams and his own team, even for a player like Jamie McGinn just to fly under the radar and take care of business in his own ways is also very crucial to the team. So a lot of success I can still credit to Jamie McGinn, because he does a lot of the dirty work that the other attacking players don't have to do and don't need to do, because he is there to do it.
Yeah, and of course, just to... Okay, sorry, Mac, you had one more point?
Yeah, no, because he's Scottish. Gio, respect to John McGinn, Scottish legend. Let's keep him safe, and he deserves his starting lineup. So I don't know what you're talking about. Disrespect. Yeah,
on the opposite end, though, for West Ham, like you said, Mac, there are some holes there. I think one of the biggest problems as well is the option up front as a striker. Antonio credit to him. He had great individual performances early in the season. It's moving forward if you have a dynamic dynamic three across the midfield behind him with Paquetá, Bowen, Kudus even. You need someone that's going to offer a little bit more in the final third than Antonio and Ings. And so I think that against big teams, like you said, Mac, it's going to be a problem for them, not just defensively, but even scoring goals. The only goal that they got, deflection from Jared Bowen there, even though they got a good amount of set pieces, and set pieces are always going to be a problem defending against West Ham. Some questions there on how they'll do against big teams going forward. But lastly, let's wrap up our Premier League discussion with, of course, Liverpool 2, Everton 0 in the Merseyside derby. A game where Salah was able to overtake Steven Gerrard in terms of goals at Anfield. I think it was 105 in the end. And also the scoreline possession giving a quite a comprehensive win for Liverpool in this game. But Mac, you had a point to discuss in this game as well.
Yeah, I want to be able to start off. Again, this is a continuation of referees making poor decisions. Konate should have been sent off. It was ridiculous that he wasn't, and I think that's had such a dramatic effect on the game. It's near identical to kind of what happened with Young. He should have and was sent off, considering 2 yellow card offenses. And the weird part is, even earlier in the game, Tarkowski got a yellow card for kind of halting the play and not allowing Liv to be able to break out, and it was his first foul of the game. Konate, the exact same situation. Whereas if that red card is given, at that point, the scoreline is 0-0. And it allows Liverpool to continue to dominate the game, which, if that red card is given, a whole different result could have played out. So was it a direct impact of what the result ended up being? No. But I think it had a great effect. And I think, unfortunately, again, it's a continuing problem where, and it's kind of the nature of football, referees make poor decisions. They're humans too. But I think in this individual situation, it causes too much of an effect on the game and not favorably to Everton. Because up to that point, even with 10 men, I'd argue they were playing very well. They, in the entirety of, let's say, up until maybe the 60th minute, it didn't feel like there was many grade A opportunities for Liverpool. They just managed to kind of scrape out first a penalty. Everton then had to expose themselves, and they got hit on the counter. That's very much a normal flow of the game, but it was unfortunate that, like I said, the refereeing decisions had an impact. And the worst part is Klopp knew right away, because immediately afterward, he subbed them off. That's where he's like, yeah, okay, the referee made a wrong decision. Obviously, he's not going to say that after the game because there's no advantage to him for that position. But everybody knew but the referee, which I think that says enough.
Yeah, I completely agree. That is definitely a hinder to Everton's chances to getting a result in this game. At that point, 0-0. Even with 10 men, Ashley Young getting sent off in the first half. I guess similar offenses. Everton did a great job to keep Liverpool, like you said, Mac, from essentially shots from range and not much created in terms of clear-cut chances. But I guess, Gio, what were your takes on this game and overall result?
Yeah, no, this is what we would call the ultimate game of chain of events. Like Max said, Konate not being, sent off for something like that is almost kind of baffling. Even yourself as a Liverpool fan, I'm sure as soon as you saw it, you're like, oh no, this is bad. But when the decision goes your way, it's like, damn, we got away with murder. How are we going to take advantage of this? And if Everton, gets that red, does get a goal from there, Ashley Young doesn't have to make those challenges. There's, of course, we can argue that, there's no saying he wouldn't make those challenges. But if you're playing up 1-0, you're able to play a little bit more freely. Kind of just shade players in and out of areas you don't like. But not having to step into those challenges like the way he did on his second yellow. But I thought Liverpool, of course, took advantage however they could. I thought, especially the second Liverpool goal, all credits to Darwin Nunez. I thought, again, decision making for him has been on a very high note. Start of last season, he probably would have tried to take that defender on one-on-one. and maybe put himself in a bad situation and then take a poor shot. But again, very great pass through to Salah. And of course, Salah being Salah, Salah finishes. But yeah, I think Everton should feel hard done here. Because on any other day with any other ref, that could have gone very differently, and the scenario could have been Everton takes the Merseyside derby, or it's a draw in the Merseyside derby. So tough one. I think Klopp will be kind of sweating that he kind of got away with one, but he'll be happy to take the 3 points, of course.
Yeah, and it, like you said, Gio, it's compounded because it is a Merseyside derby away at your rivals, and so that's never gonna be an easy thing to take. And so, of course, Liverpool being at home, that may or may not have had a role to play in this and the referee's decision making at that point, regardless of what it was. The end result was that Liverpool did win, and so at home that is a big result for them. Moving on now to Champions League matches and teams playing at home. Newcastle are taking on Dortmund. Gio, Newcastle won against PSG comprehensively last time out. They are back at home again this Champions League midweek, and they just beat Crystal Palace 4-0 on the weekend. They're flying. I think at time of recording, most goals in the Premier League so far with 24. And looking like those problems from last year where they really couldn't score are a thing of the past. What are your takes from this game coming up?
My only advice to them, if they even care about our advice, is that don't get too highs on your highs and don't get too lows on your lows. I think they're doing a good job of not getting too lows on their lows because they started the season kind of iffy. But obviously, with the depth that you have, players, do a little boot switch, start scoring. It's all great. But yes, you won against PSG at home, fantastic. But I don't think you can count out Dortmund. I think they're always season in, out. They're always fairly solid. Great game plans coming in. Solid players throughout the pitch. So yeah, I don't think they can and should underestimate this opponent in Dortmund. Dortmund has been in the Champions League longer than they have. And they know it. They know what to do, what to expect, everything like that. If anything, I'd still, if you're a bettor, put a little money on Dortmund because you never know with this one. Just because the experience speaks for itself. They've been counted out, many, many years. They're a player development team, but I don't think you should take anything away from that. They're still a very strong team. That's why they're in this competition year in, year out. And Newcastle, yes, they beat PSG, but they still have a lot to prove in the competition.
Yeah, Gio, I love that you mentioned the experience for Dortmund. Of course, they came off of a 1-0 win on Friday against Werder Bremen, and that experience coming through. Marco Reus, one of their older players on the pitch, is performing quite well at the start of the season. They also do have Mats Hummels and Emre Can, who are experienced players in the Bundesliga, but also have experience in the Champions League as well. So that's going to be something that Newcastle, on the contrary to how well they started, Mac, don't really have as much. So I guess, would this be a must-win for Newcastle at home, considering they are in such a tough group? What are your expectations?
I think must-win is a little bit rough because, again, there's still a lot of games left. They are first on the table right now. They have a little bit of a cushion. However, I think that if you were going into this is probably the easiest team that they could potentially face. And I think thus far it's played out in the Champions League. Borussia Dortmund have failed to score in each of the last 3 Champions League games. They have no problem scoring the Bundesliga, but they haven't done a great job of kind of converting in the final third. And they've actually, I think they have 32 shots thus far in the Champions League, but haven't converted 1, whereas Newcastle have only 18. So in terms of the final third, there is a lot of questions to be asked about how well this team can perform. So I think that it'll be interesting to see, especially away, what offense do we actually be able to get from Dortmund? Are they able to play well against a Newcastle team defensively? I would argue at different points over the last, let's say, season and a bit, have been one of the best defensive teams in Europe. So I'm very skeptical in terms of what their ability will be in the final third. My question more so is Newcastle offensively, coming off this win that they had on the weekend where kind of it was free flowing and everybody got on the board. Everyone got a bite of the apple. Murphy scored kind of even a more fortunate goal than Mudryk in some ways. Anthony Gordon is playing very, very well, kind of nestled into that kind of starting left winger position, has made it his own. And whoever starts, Isak or Wilson, depending on the fixture, always seems to bag a goal. So I think that overall as a team, offensively, they played very, very well in those moments. And if they're able to carry it over at home, again, against a Dortmund team that hasn't scored a whole lot of goals this season, I think that they should be favorites, and should come out very, very confident. But I don't feel as if it is a must-win yet for them. They've given themselves a little bit of breathing room. However, if I'm Eddie Howe, I'm making sure that even though we do have that in the back of your mind, they need to be able to keep their foot on their opponent's throat and put a stranglehold in their group. Because if they can be in a position where, let's say after match week 4, they're comfortably going to make it out no matter what, then at that point, they can start kind of reassessing their priorities for a couple match weeks and save kind of more legs. Because even though they've played well thus far this season, I would still argue they don't have the deepest of squads. So to have that little bit of leeway and kind of get this kind of taken care of early would be great, but it's not necessary.
Okay, and to flip it over to the other teams in this group, then Mac, you mentioned PSG there off that poor result against Newcastle in the last Champions League match, but 1-3-0 away. 1-3-0 in the weekend against Strasbourg. Looking like at home they must win against AC Milan if they want to cement themselves as one of the top 2 teams in this table. AC Milan on the end of 2 ties, and they are facing Juventus essentially at the time of recording. So that's going to be a tough match for them in Serie A. What are your expectations from this game?
I think that this could potentially be very evenly contested between these 2 teams, because I think they're not similar to a lot of the teams talking about Europe, and it's very interesting. There isn't a team, I would say maybe in some ways other than Madrid, where they're playing, I feel like, at their peak in certain aspects, where they're kind of having that long run of form across all competitions, where either of these teams, I think, on their day can be world beaters, can beat any team because they have the offensive capabilities. It just depends who's going to show up in that matchup. I think in this game, in my opinion, PSG have just that little bit more offensively between Dembele, between Mbappe, and who's ever kind of Kolo Muani or whoever starting a striker position for them in some aspects. I think they have that little bit more offensive firepower. But I think that, again, this matchup, more so than even Newcastle and Dortmund, is a coin flip. But I think separately from those teams, I think both teams need to win this game. If they don't come out with all 3 points, I think their position in terms of making it in, because they're facing off right against each other, along with Newcastle right now, who potentially can make it out of the group. And I think coming away with a tie may not be enough, because then you're putting all of your cards in just one game in the reverse fixture. So I think that they should be a little bit worried, because they're facing each other back to back, because it's the 3rd game, they're facing one at home. It's a home and away in some ways. So if they can get that early lead, if one of these teams can snatch all 3 points, it gives them that little bit of space against their direct competition. So I think, again, it's very even. I lean PSG, but I think that if you were to ask me, this is without doubt the matchup I'm going to watch for sure and have my eyes on.
Yeah, that's a great point. They, of course, face each other back-to-back in the Champions League match days, and so it's going to be a great way, I think, for maybe AC Milan to play a little more defensively, see what they can do to sort of target those weaknesses that PSG has at the back, as they are, I think, still unsettled there. But what do you think the approach would be, and what do you think the result will be, Gio, for this fixture?
I'm actually leaning against what Mac picked. I actually like AC Milan. I think AC Milan, again, do have a lot to prove in this fixture. They haven't looked fantastic. I know, in Serie A, they're good, they're playing well, but, put Giroud in that, he can still get a clean sheet. But the fact of the matter is, I don't think they've performed well enough for their aspirations in the Champions League. The result, didn't fully get a result against Newcastle, I believe. They'll be looking to prove a point, and they still have to get a result to, potentially make it out the group. So I think they're going to put all their eggs in the basket right now, and they're really expecting to get a result here. PSG as well, after coming on a loss, this is going to be a battle. Like Max said, this is probably going to be, the one to watch for any football fan. Even if you're not a fan of PSG or AC Milan, I think this is going to be a great game. But I think overall, from front to back, I think AC Milan is just a more cohesive team as opposed to PSG. They're going to rely heavy on Mbappe. On the reverse side, who's really going to kind of defend, Rafael Leao? When he's on, and he's a very tough guard. So it really goes both ways. But if I had to pick a team that's going to really be able to limit one person or have enough in other areas of the pitch to compensate to losing the Mbappe, then I think it's going to be AC Milan.
Okay, and of course, Mike Maignan, the French national keeper, will be facing off against a lot of his French national teammates this upcoming game, so that's going to be an interesting matchup to see. But yeah, you heard it from us here. This concludes our podcast for today. If you guys like what you heard, please like and subscribe to us on our social medias. That's at houseof_footy. If you have any comments, suggestions, or general banter, get in touch with us via email as well, houseoffooty@hotmail.com. The next time you hear from us will be later this week when we review the Champions League matches taking place, and we'll also preview next weekend's Premier League action. But until then, thank you, Mac, for joining us.
Peace out.
Thank you, Gio.
Take care, guys.
Let's go, guys.